earlier this year, so he's talked to him and he's doing it for us. So thank you again.
All right,
Appreciate it.
thanks for having me.
First time out here, so we'll let you go and
All right,
you talk about what you got going here.
well, welcome everybody. I've been talking to quite a number of you guys already. Tom, do we have the pictures I sent you?
Oh.
Ooh. I sent it to Bob, I sent it to Sherry.
I have them on the phone.
Put them on your phone with Bob, videotape it, we'll project it.
I can put them on there. Oh, you have it, got it on a phone? Got it on an iPhone?
I think so, yes.
Look it up. I'll just stop this and.
Well, y'all, before, so I demoed in July at Chicago. First time I demoed, but I, being a high school teacher now for 20 years, I'm pretty used to getting up in front of people. They're just normally 15-year-olds, not 18-year-olds.
This could get more unruly.
Yeah. Well, it's nice that I don't have to grade
Put it
any
up
of
there.
them. So that's the big benefit. I don't have to worry about like who's doing what. So and who's doing better than others. So so it's kind of a natural for me to get up and talk about how to do something. I enjoy it. I was explaining that I know that I turned in high school because there's evidence. I had both my mom and dad were split up, and they each had a table, a pedestal table that I built for them in high school, and it had a spindle turn base leg, and so I know I did it. And I know my first real lathe, because she went out and tried to use that crappy Sears thing, and wood was just flying off of it. And she was blaming the lathe, and I said, it's probably the lathe. This is the one we should get, honey. And 2.5 years ago, I joined Chicago Wood Turners, and that was the best. Oh, that's not
All right, we've got the pictures up there now. There's
That's
four of
not-
them.
Okay. Yeah, no.
These are the
Well,
ones.
so anyways, well, that's one of them. So I was teaching at a girls' school, and the nuns that ran the school were Sisters of the Blessed Virgin Mary, the BDMs, and their icon is a lily. So I thought, what better way to kiss up to some nuns and pave that pathway to heaven than to start making them little flowers of their little icons. So pretty crude, pretty rough. I mean, I'd say that the petals were probably a good 3/8 of an inch thick, which is pretty darn thick. And then I just kept at it. And I don't think any of these are the ones I want to show you. So I just kept at it. And eventually, back in Phoenix, I had my own foundry. I was burning out stuff and pouring in aluminum. And so I did a piece where I turned a flower, and then it had aluminum roots to it. And I still have that piece, and that piece is really kind of nice. But again, it was really thick, and that was never what I wanted. I never wanted those. I wanted delicate flowers, but I wanted them to look pretty accurate as I could get them. And so that became the quest. And it was kind of on again, off again. I'm really interested in turning bowls. I'm really interested in doing hollow forms. And like you can see, that's the one that's got the aluminum roots. And now the thickness of the petals is maybe down to about 3/16, maybe a little bit thicker at the base, obviously. But I knew that I was onto something, so I just kept going. And eventually, the piece that I made for the members show up in St. Paul got into the members show at St. Paul. So I was very excited about that. And it actually started because I was doing a carving piece, a hand carving piece about that I wanted daffodils for. And so I ordered some holly and had some nice white maple, and thought, well, I should just turn as many of these as I can, because I expected I'd screw them up. And I ended up with like 6 or 8 of them. And I was like, well, now what? And so then I came up with the idea for the piece that eventually got into the St. Paul show. And it's still up there now. And if anybody has the latest edition of the American Wood Turner, it's in the magazine now. So, so you can look that up. So anyways, without further ado, let me just explain what I've kind of come to with this. So, so I use this kind of center for most of my turning when I'm turning between centers. It's either this or a cup center, depending on the tool I'm using. If I'm gonna use a skew, I'm gonna use a cup center because I don't want it to bite in at all. Because if I get a catch, I want it to spin. I want the wood to stop and not keep going. For these, I've got this little, it's kind of a spur center, but not exactly. And then I brought with me a piece of cherry and a piece of poplar. I just discovered that the piece of cherry's got a crack that goes down to about there, so I'm not gonna turn this one. I don't know when that happened. This was dried before I got it, so I'm gonna turn this piece of poplar. So the one thing that I discovered that was very vital is that I've got to turn this cross grain. I can't turn this with the grain parallel to the bedways, because when you get the petals that delicate, you want the fibers of the wood traveling along with the petals. If it's not, well, they just sometimes just fly apart on the lathe. And you know, it's not a big deal, but it's not ideal either. So I always start between centers. I do as much as I can with the bowl gouge. Now I just unfortunately recently, because I wish that I had known about Hannah's tools a while ago, because I really liked his handles. And Donna Zills Banford was just up in Chicago, and I did one of her classes, and I saw her tools, and I thought, wow, that is a really nice handle. And I like the way it fits in your hands, and Hannes actually talks about this on his YouTube channel, and it's really a comfortable handle. And I thought, while I was at it, because everything's on sale because he's retiring, apparently he is retired now, I thought, well, I could use a new bowl gouge. I'll get a new bowl gouge. Well, he's got this funky grind that I can't replicate very well by hand. And so I'm looking for his fixture, as he calls it, to jig, to get this. What he has is like a micro bevel on the outside, and I'm just not good enough hand. He's got then another bevel, and then he finally grinds off the toe. And I had taken a 1/4-inch bowl gouge and put my regular bevel, and then ground back the heel to where the tip only had about 1/8 of an inch of a bevel on there, so that I could get behind the petals. Here, so here's what one of them looks like finished. If you want to pass that around, you get an idea. So anyway, that's what I really like. It only takes a handful of tools that I have here, and I'll talk about each one as I use it. But it all starts with the bowl gouge. I like a smaller bowl gouge. And I'll get this going just fast enough to feel good. It keeps loosening up on me. So now that it's rounded, I just kind of pick a spot and start to cut in to the back of the flower. So I'm just swinging this through. You know, this is just a lot like turning the inside of a bowl or the outside of the bowl, I guess, as well. And I'm just trying to get it brought down to where it starts to look like the back of the flower. Just like two of us, a little bit more. So I'm lucky that I was born left-handed, but my mom thought that that was a sign of the devil, so she tried to make me right-handed. So now I'm ambidextrous. I think she still thinks I'm a little bit devil, though. Yeah. So I try to get a little bit of a dig out underneath. So that the petals look like they're curving down. So this harness tool really does a nice job with that cut. Better than my little Robert Sorby 1/4-inch fold gouge was doing. It wasn't bad, but I'd sure like this better. I wish I could get that original grind back again. So hopefully one day I figure out how to make that cut just exactly right. So now, I can't finish out the back of this just yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a little meat right there. I'm going to grab my boudin, and I've got to make a shoulder and a place for my chuck. On my small chuck to grab. So I really like this boudin for this. It does a pretty good job. I've learned over the years that you definitely have to have this grain going this direction. So now I'll start to shape out the top of it. So you can tell I've switched to right-handed. And now I'm going to start to shape out the corona, which is that kind of like bugle sort of center part. And at this point I kind of leave it a little bit bigger than I may want it at the end. And now I'm going to start to shape out the petals. And I try to get these to where the very outside part right here is as thin as I can get it. And so just in a little bit, I try to leave it somewhere around about 1/8 of an inch thick, because I'm going to do a little bit of carving on that after I'm done turning it. So this was the part that I was always trying to get just right, is get that delicate touch. And I'm just right now just trying to sight down the piece itself to see how I'm doing. And I'm going to get it as close as I can get it between centers before I take it out from the in-between centers where it's fully well supported before I put it in a chuck, and then it's only supported on the back end. A few little shearing passes. Of course, I've got my little feeler gauges right here on my fingers. Take a little bit off this inside. Not too bad, not too bad. I think that's good for this, to this point, so you can start to see the shape of the daffodil starting to come alive here. So this is just between centers, and I've got this somewhat thinned out. Would have liked to have gotten out a little bit better. Now the difference between this lathe and my lathe, this part pushes out a little bit further, so I can get way over like this. I can't really get with this one. So it is what it is, as they say in Chicago all the time. All right, so now I switch from being between centers to, I've got this little Nova chuck that I've had for a while. I love my Vic marks, but the Vic marks are just too big to make these. So I like this little set of jaws right here for this, because it not only does it push it out a little bit further, but it sure grips it really well. So put it in the chuck, and then now I can work the rest of the flower a little bit better. And now I'm going to switch over from a 3/8 bowl gouge to a 3/8 detail spindle gouge. Yeah. So then I can dig out the corona. I can finish shaping out the petals. I can get this just ever so much more delicate, as long as the wood doesn't fly apart on me. And again, I'm sighting down the petal itself to get an idea of how deep I can go in. And at what point I can start to make that turn. And then now I think that the corona might be just a little bit long, so I'm going to take a little bit off the end of that. Too aggressive. I got a little bit loose in the chuck. And so now I'll start opening up the inside of the corona. Dixie Biggs says that you'll recognize all the other wood turners in heaven because they all have a hole in their elbow. Now, I'm not going to get this like all the way down to the bottom, and I don't find that that's even really necessary, because by the time I put the little, I guess they're called stamen, into the bottom, you know, that pretty much takes up the whole space on the inside anyways. But now I'll switch to this even smaller, I don't know what size this is, spindle gouge. And then I can really get in there a little bit further, a little bit deeper. Thin it from the inside. Just taking little light cuts. And then there we go. And then lastly, got this idea from Stuart Batty. He always says you can bring it to a point, and then he tries to sell you his vortex tool. But the problem is his vortex tools now all come with his big screw lock thing, and they're all glued on. So I had to go to Ashley Harwood and get hers, but hers is exactly the same as Stuart Batty's, but this is what they call the vortex tool, and it's just a needle tool. I hope I never have to sharpen it, because I'm not sure I know how to sharpen it, but I only use this at the very end to get in here and bring this a little bit deeper, cutting a little bit off of the corona, a little bit down into the petals. and just bury that seam in between them so that it really feels like it's really deep in there. So at this point, I would sand this, and I would sand this all the way to about 400 or maybe even a little higher. Even though I'm going to carve on this face, on the lathe, I can sand down into all these little nooks and crannies that I'm never gonna touch again. And if I have to get in there later, I mean, there's a little bump right here on the corona I should probably turn off. But I'm gonna finish this again later on at my house. So it's important to me that this be as thin as possible out here on this end, because I'm not gonna touch it again. I'm only gonna touch back in here when I carve it, and then I'm gonna cut out the petals. Now, so once it's sanded, then my lathe has a real nice indexing guide. So I went ahead and indexed one to bring with me. So it's like magic of TV. So then I would index this out so there's 6 points all the way around. Yeah, so you can see how on the back side it's been, how it kind of dishes in, and that kind of conforms to the front. And then you really get that deep cut in there that really kind of helps set the whole thing off, I think. All right, so from here, once I get to this point, I have this Trent Bosch carving stand. I don't have loyalty. If you look at my tools, I don't have loyalty to one brand. I buy for what I need, and you know, if Trent doesn't have what I need, well, Carter and Sons might, or you know, Thompson's might. I think D-Way must only do out west. Does that seem right? I've got some D-Way tools, but I've never seen them anywhere but out in Portland. Yeah?
You're talking to the wrong crowd.
Oh, is D-Way here a lot?
That's all I have.
Where do you find them? I don't find them at any of the symposiums.
D-Way.
That is shot straight from.
Oh, you just buy from them online?
D-Way tools.
Oh.
Right.
I gotta touch it. I gotta handle it. If I haven't, like anything I buy online, it's because I saw it in their shop, you know, at the symposium or something. So, yeah, I'm all over the place. I have no loyalty to one particular tool. I really like Trent's handles. I've got a lot of Trent's handles. I like his 5/8 bowl gouge as my workhorse. And I really like this carving stand. And I put this carving stand through hell and back. So once I get to this point, and I've got I've taken a mallet. I've mallet chiseled on this thing. It'll start to rock over, and so it's probably not the best idea, but can't be hard on our tools. What can we be hard on, right? So from here, I draw out. So I am left-handed. My mama didn't teach me how to write. She really didn't want me to be left-handed. So now I'll start to draw out the petals. I find that it works best to do, for me, to do one side. I curve better one way.
Could you use a pattern to do this?
I could. I haven't. I suppose I could.
Not everybody's as good as that either.
Yeah. Well, I could certainly. I have all this kind of thin cardboard that I do use for cutting patterns or if I'm turning something where, like maybe it's a legged bowl, where I'll draw the pattern of the bowl and then cut out that pattern. So bring it back around. So I try to make it so that they're all, the puddles kind of lay over uniformly. So I usually start with the long part and then bring it back in. Just like that. Now, I started off using just a regular coping saw, but oh boy, that is one aggressive puppy. And I've blown apart a lot of flowers trying to cut with like an Irwin. And then I started thinking about it, that when I was in college, that I had to take a jewelry metalsmithing class, and we had these little saws with these little teeny blades. And so of course Amazon has it. And so I bought one. And this to me is the trick of the trade, is to use this. So now I just start very delicately, and I support the wood underneath where I'm cutting the whole way. I'm gonna say that I haven't cut myself, and so now I probably will, but I just said that. And I try to follow the line as close as I can. I'm not always the best at following my lines, but you'd be surprised, this thin of wood cuts pretty well with a little jeweler saw. And then,
You have a reason for sawing right-handed?
because the world is right-handed, and I actually, my strong arm is my right arm, and my delicate hand is my left hand. I carve by,
Put notes on your hands or something?
you know, you're right. When people say, you know, it's to the right, I have to go, wait, which way's right? I have to usually think about driving. Which side's the curb? Like, honestly, it is very confusing for me. I'm not gonna lie about that. That's the curse of being ambidextrous, is that you don't really know your left from your right as well as most people do. So when I carve by hand, you'll see I'm gonna do a little hand carving on this too. I carve right-handed. I can carve left-handed, but I'm more comfortable carving right-handed. So it just is what it is. When I was taking the Donna Zills Banford class, she was doing the thing like Jacques Vessery does, where she carves with the pyrography pen. And I generally don't think about which hand I pick things up with, but I found that when it came to the burning, I was doing the burning left-handed. When it came to the power carving, I was doing it right-handed. And I wasn't thinking about it until somebody noticed it. I think Donna came over. She's like, "You're left-handed?" And I went, "Well, I guess I am burning." And she's like, "What do you mean?" And I explained to her that, like, well, I write left-handed, but of course the only hand I've ever really hurt has been my left hand. Like, I've broken my left hand twice, so I had to write right-handed. So I can do it, just not as good. But what got my kids was when they left notes for Santa and Santa wrote them back, that was Dad writing right-handed, because they would have known our handwriting otherwise. And when they were in college, they asked us, "Who wrote the notes?" And I said, "That was me, right-handed." And they're like, that was the one thing that like kept us believing in Santa Claus for so long, is we couldn't figure out who wrote the note back. So anyways, I'm not going to bore you and cut all these out unless you really want to watch me cut all these out, because I've got another little magic of TV for you. So I just go back and forth with this. I don't always fit one cut to the other, and sometimes have to come back in. Sometimes I have to just kind of snap it off, and then I'll clean that little space out in there later on with the carving tool. So unless y'all want to watch me cut 1,000,000 of these out.
You break it?
No. I just wanted to pass it around one more time, so.
All right, so through the magic of TV, these have all been cut out now. So now comes the fun part.
That's quick.
I know, right?
Just because you use both hands.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Twice as fast.
It's very handy at the supper table.
Oh, I'm sure.
I can put myself at either end of the table and switch whichever hand I need so that I'm not elbowing the person next to me. So if I got somebody over here, I'll eat left-handed. If I'm over on this end, I'll eat right-handed. My sister always does say, yeah, you just eat both hands.
Dan, tell them we eat with both hands, baby. Put food in front of us.
Bob's starting to use a fork.
So at this point, there's a number of things to be done. I'll just start with this part. So I like to create a little difference from flower petal to flower petal. And then once it's turned off, and I'm not going to turn these off because I want to finish them. And if I turn it off, then I can't ever finish it. I hope you understand. I don't like to waste flowers. But I will use a hand carving knife, and I will just start to very delicately follow my line that I've set, really more with the saw than with the pencil, and I'll start to carve a line in and then start to carve these down to start to create some dimension to the petals themselves. So I'll keep going back and forth, cutting that in a little bit deeper. And then if you look at if anybody looked at the finished one, you can see that I do basically the same thing, but on the underside, just going the opposite direction. Wow. So this one's curved this way, this one's curved this way, just to kind of complete that out. But I have to do that after it's been turned off. And so I hold it in my hand and I try not to crush it. And because they do get pretty thin before it's all done. So I'll just keep working this around, and this also gives me the chance to get in between here to finish what I couldn't get quite finished with the cut of the saw, because the corona gets in the way, that I can't get the saw all the time turned around the way I want it. So the idea here is to kind of give a little bit more of that feeling. Because remember, this part I tried to turn as thin as possible, but right here, it's got some meat to it, because I'm going to be carving into that to create that little kind of wave into the petal. So I got to fake that a little bit right here, because it's thick all the way through. So I've got to use my carving knife to cut this down on this side, and then when I do it on the other side, it will take this one up in. And so then it feels like the whole thing is at like feather thickness. So that'll go all the way around with this. And then there's a number of things that I do with my power carver. So I spent entirely too much money on this thing for the accessory. So part of the reason for taking Donna's class was that I knew we'd use this more, because I knew she used one, and I needed for myself to justify how much it cost me to buy this stupid thing. Because I was like, wow, why did I spend all that money? Oh, because actually it wasn't even Jacques that
Would you
convinced me to
describe
buy
what
it.
that is?
Huh?
Would you describe to him what that is?
What this is?
The whole thing.
Yeah, this is Jacques Vessery. He calls it prescribed burn because he used to be a fire jumper out west. and so they would do prescribed burns. This is really one of the best. It's both a micromotor on this side, and then on this side it's a pyrography pen. And and I didn't bring mine with me because I didn't need it and I didn't want to tote it. But what's really amazing about his pyrography pen is the rapid, its ability to rapidly reheat itself. Like when you touch it to the wood, it loses heat, but his almost instantly gets right back up to temperature again. So when I was taking this class with Donna, and she was teaching us to use it, if this were the pyrography pen, you would carve down areas that you wanted to be deep, but then you'd apply texture by rolling that flat burner tip around like this. And for most pens, it wouldn't stay hot enough to maintain being on the wood, but his recovers so fast that you can just take small little turns like this as you go around, and it stays hot enough that it actually carves in and texturizes it. It's really an amazing machine. It's really an amazing machine. My wife shares my studio with me, and she has told me that we have to schedule times for me to burn the wood though. She cannot stand the smell of that burnt wood.
You had a price range on that?
Huh?
Price range?
I think
More than $1.50.
it was more than $1.50. I think it was about $700 to $800 for this.
That's his combination.
Yeah, and you get, I mean, he gives you some, he gives you, his burner, and then he also gives you an adapter so that if you have another pyrography pen that's got those like 1/4 inch, like headphone jack kind of things to them, you can plug those in. He gives you some tips. He gives you a couple of burrs, and then there's a sleeve that's an adapter sleeve. So this will take an 1/8 and 3/32 shaft tools on them, and it's a nice rotor tool for sure. So for this part, for around the Corona, the actual flower just kind of undulates, right? It's kind of like a really, like almost like a frilly sort of thing. Like a bloomer, right? Is that right? Like the little twirly things at the bottom? I don't know. But what I do is I just kind of carve that in, and so, and I just kind of totally random, just go by sight, whatever looks right. Just to kind of get it going. And yes, I'm doing this right-handed, but supported left-handed. This poplar is so soft and a little bit terry, like that. And I don't mind if it burns it a little bit. It adds a little something extra to it that I think is okay. I don't even try to get in there with sandpaper. I just leave it there. I think that makes it look kind of nice, actually. So, so from here, this was kind of the missing ingredient for me. Now, one thing I learned very quickly and the hard way is that you have to turn the speed way down with these because there's so much mass out here on the end. I didn't check my speed the other day. They warned me when I bought these. I bought these from Power Carving Depot up in St. Paul at the symposium. And the guy told me, he's like, be careful with your speed. If you turn it up too much, it'll bend over because of the inertia. And I thought that it was already turned down, and it wasn't, and so I ruined one. And I was really disappointed because it still had a lot of sandpaper left on it. I was really sad. But this was the magic thing that I was looking for. And I want to tell you, I was looking everywhere. And everybody's like, oh, Dremel. No, the Dremel ones are too big and fat. There's too much other stuff in the way. I talked to Kristen Levere up at St. Paul, and she was like, I showed her the piece, and she was like, well, why do you turn them so thin in the first place? Because I said, I just need to make a little cut in there. She's like, well, why do you turn it so thin anyways? Just because to show that you can? And I said, well, maybe, but also because it's a flower. And I don't want to spend that much time carving it. I'd rather turn it that thin and leave a little space to carve it and not use a big saber burr and all that stuff like they like to use, which totally fine, but it just wasn't what I wanted. And then on the last day, or maybe it was late Saturday afternoon, I found these guys, and they had these things, and they had all different grits. And it turns out all I really needed was a 240. And so I have all these 800 grit of these that maybe someday I'll use, but for now, all I really need is the 240. So I turn my speed way down, all the way down, because it only needs to spin about this fast. And then again, just by eye, and you'll notice that I'm constantly putting my finger under the pedals. I'm constantly supporting these. Because even though the grain is running this way and it's really giving it some good structural support, I just don't trust it. And I've got dead daffodils in my scrap bin from turning them off of the lathe at the end because I made one mistake. One time I got all the way through on the inside. I couldn't believe it. But I've broken petals doing this. So now I need just a little bit more speed. So now I just basically kind of lay this up here and work it back and forth and around the petal a little bit. And all I'm trying to do is cut down on one side, and then I pick it up. I leave that ridge, that backbone right there, and just keep carving that down. And it's just really all by sight. And so now it's starting to really, can you see that okay? Now it's really starting to take on that sort of petal look. Now, of course, I might get in here like this before I do that on the ones that I've carved, and smooth that out just a bit before I do the other part. That was something that I didn't do on the piece that went to St. Paul. I just hand sanded all that, and then the other day I was doing this and I said, why don't I just stick that in there and see how that works? And that worked out fine. So I'll just keep working my way around this. You'll notice that I turn this on this base all the time. I've only had it turned it all the way off once. Fortunately, I caught it before it fell with the flower on it. But just a lot of going back and forth with this. This is where the poplar is really nice. Boy, it sands really quick. And I don't know if you guys want to watch me do all of them. This is fun. So this tool right here was just really exactly what I needed.
What other woods do you like to work with?
I really like the maple. Maple works really well, and because I have so much maple that's like green, because that's all the only tree that grows in Chicago, I think. It doesn't matter whether it's green or it's dry. I've done holly. Holly worked really well. Any good tight grained. I've done some oak, but I don't really particularly like the oak as well. Maybe because that's the one that I blew out the backside of it. But it's harder to get it to look smooth because of the openness of its grain. I just didn't feel like, I did a bouquet for one of the guys in my club for his wife. And I started 3 oak flowers and only one of them made the bouquet. It had a lot of nice figure to it, but it was a challenge for me because I get real persnickety about it, and I just was standing on that oak one forever because it probably was as smooth as any of the maples. It just didn't look it. So cherry is really nice too. This is what I wanted to demo for you, but like I said, I happened to notice that crack right there going pretty deep and pretty far across, and I didn't want that to fly out and, go, oh, well, sorry. So I just always bring 2, right? Just in case. So cherry works really well. And what's nice about the cherry is for the stems, I actually just buy dowel rods already, and the cherry bends the best with steam. The birch, I guess it is kind of okay, and I steam this part. This is that compressed wood that like Tanya Rada and Kristen Levere and I think maybe even Rebecca DeGroot is starting to use a little bit in her stuff. I've been playing around with this stuff for a while. The other day, I turned a flower with that wood, not a daffodil. I was trying to turn an orchid, and then I realized I didn't really know what an orchid looked like. I mean, I did, but I didn't. And so I was like, the internet doesn't give me enough views of an orchid because an orchid's so complex. And then lo and behold, our orchid was blooming. And so this morning I took like 12 pictures of a single flower. And, my wife knew what I was doing, but the cat thought I was weird. So definitely. So that's kind of where I plan to go. Now, most people tell you can't turn that wood, but when you turn like a little chunk like this, and you turn it, I turned it side grain just like I turned this one, it wasn't a problem. I don't think you could spindle turn, because I think it would be like rubber. And I noticed that when I cut the petals, that I could actually kind of push them over a little bit, it was bendy enough that was happening, that they were moving. And I thought, well, that could be advantageous. And it worked out really pretty well. I was able to make a pretty thin cut in the middle and able to kind of dig that in a little bit further and further because I was able to kind of move them a little bit with the backside of the tool to get in there. So that's kind of the next place to go with this.
What's that material? Is it MDF?
It is, it's a special, so it's all kinds of wood. Most of the time it's like ash and oak and those like coarser grained woods, but they put them in this giant machine, huge timbers, like big, full trees. And it's hydraulic and it hyper saturates it. So it's like in a tank that pressurizes and it super hydrates the wood, and then it compresses the wood end for end. And because of all the super hydration, the grains of the wood go like this, and they start to overlap themselves. And they use this for big structural wood beams and stuff so that they can bend one beam. So if you've ever been in a place like a church or whatever, and they truly have beams and you can follow the grain, that was it. And they used to be around a lot more. And then finally, like the last machine in the country broke, and the guy was like, well, that's it. And this other guy that runs this company now came and got it for basically scrap metal price, hauled it out. I think he's in Idaho or Iowa, one of those other I states that's not here. and got it back into service, and now does it. It has a company going again, and you can buy boxes of it for about maybe $150 to $200 a box. It's about this big. It's about 20 or 30 pounds of wood, and it's whatever. They're just like end pieces, and you can't really ask him for anything particular. You got to kind of take what you can get. I tell him I want the thicker the better. So like that's what I put on the form. I don't know if they pay attention, but I haven't gotten anything thicker than like a true 1-inch thick piece, which is fine because like the piece that I had, well, y'all didn't get to see it, but if you look in the AAW magazine, you look at that, all the stems are really bendy. So I take the thinner pieces they sends me, and I only will cut it on my bandsaw because I don't want to lose that much wood, because it's like cutting bars of gold as far as I'm concerned. Spending that much money on wood, it's a little troublesome for my cheapo brain to turn it on the lathe too, because I'm thinking about all the wood that's just piling up on the ground. But I had to try it. But I'll cut little square pieces, and then I've got a doweling jig that I'll just put it in my drill. Then I cut it too thick, and then I sand it down, and it looks good. But it rips. It also rips on the lathe, but the tools are sharp enough that if you keep your tools really sharp, it will turn. Kristen Levere says you can't turn it. I'm like, yeah, I think you can, and then I just did it. So, not trying to make her wrong, but she would say a million times you can't turn it. And I think if it's a block like this, you can. And so far. So I haven't tried a daffodil. I don't think that's quite the thing. I'm gonna try some lilies and try to turn it spindle ways, so that way the grain is going with it, and then try to get some real bends out of the petals that way, so that they're not just all exactly the same like they were in the early days, but you didn't get to see those pictures. So, but that's it. So it's not a very long demo. Are you guys okay with it not being?
You're right at an hour.
Oh, perfect.
Perfect.
That's it. So just to wrap it up, I would then from here, once I went ahead and carved it both sides, or carved it all on this side, I would chuck it back up on the lathe in this chuck, and I would just take like probably this spindle gouge, and I would readdress underneath here, just from this part down, until I got it down to about 3/16 in diameter, and then take the little jeweler saw and cut it off. And then that gives me a nice flat spot to drill the hole for the stem. Because I've done it before where I've accidentally carved it all round, and I had to flatten a part again. And I'm like, well, why did I carve it all down round? So I spend about maybe another hour and a half hand sanding it after this, like just getting all those areas where I carved and all this edges of the petals kind of tapered down so that they look really nice, and then all smooth. And then I use a water-based lacquer from M-Tech with my airbrush, and that's how I paint them.
What color is a real daffodil?
Well, they come in all kinds of different colors. So they're yellow, orange, white. I've turned them in Purple Heart, which didn't really work very well either. I figured that these are really close to daffodils, but also not. So there's a little stylization to it, but also anybody that looks at them knows it's a daffodil. That's kind of the goal, you know? So, all right, that's it.
Thank you.